Hi, welcome to this next presentation on violence as a tool to the British Empire from the 18th century to the early 20th century. This video is going to be covering the Americas, the Native American War and the War of Independence, and this slide has been put together by Lauren Brannigan. So, Britain used violence to cause a Native American war by capturing citizens from US ships. This shows how Britain did use violence to attempt to maintain their empire and control. It started off in June 1812 and lasted up until the 24th of December 1814. However, the violence Britain used to try and control these peoples did not work for them, as their influence in more than one place ended. They lost influence among Northwest Indians, native Indians, but Canada did remain British. However, it ended up establishing its own national identity and fracturing and falling slightly away from British influence while it was still technically under our control. Britain also used violence during the Napoleonic Wars, which spilled into the Americas, and developed an us against them mentality from this. They continued to use violence to maintain their empire during the War of Independence. When Britain found out how serious and strong US objections were, they continued to use violence as a tool in the war by ordering their captains of the Royal Navy to search US ships for any deserters up to the Empire. However, when Britain obtained the Michigan Territory, it was not because of their violence during the war, it was due to the Indian Confederation. So it proves that violence was not the only tool in their toolbox. They used many other things, like possibly trade, and in this case, agreements, treaties. Britain's use of violence during the war may have given the confidence to isolate these 9 ships and send them over the Atlantic. Britain may have used violence as the primary tool during the War of Independence due to the betrayal and disbelief they felt at the start, but the violence used may have continued and worsened as Britain's feelings did the same. This is because Britain eventually became furious and felt resentment towards the US. One interesting example is Tecumseh, a Shawnee war chief who built up the Indian Confederation, as I mentioned previously, which helped the Michigan Territory fall back into the possession of Britain. And when he did pass away, it was a big disadvantage to Britain and the Canadians, weakening their position. In the beginning of the war, Britain's feelings, they felt betrayed by the US. Now, Sir George Prevost is an example of a British soldier during the War of Independence, but he's interesting as he was born in the US. He served in the British Army even before the war began, which shows he was loyal to Britain throughout all his life as a soldier, even though he was from New Jersey in the Americas. Prevost served as a governor-in-chief during the war, but when he had the title, he was in charge of Canada. Prevost's reputation was ruined by his actions in 1813 and 1814, just a few years before he died. This is the reason he was called back to London in 1815 and shows how quickly and easily Britain would call out a soldier if they affected their violent plans in any way during the War of Independence. This just emphasizes how important violent attacks were to Britain as a primary tool in maintaining their empire. Here are the sources used in this presentation. Now, next we're going to be looking at another case where natives were victimized by a victim of violence from the British Empire in Ryan's presentation on the Tasmanian genocide. Thanks.